Walgistuk, Abjilida, regularly of Tandil Jubidayo, Giskuk, Hanigagurudumon of died, Tandil Megidadum, Tandil Mawidai, Nindeluisi Miigam'agan, Wogamahna Jagech, Jagechka, Uskuidai, Esgenoôpetitj Elder Miigam'agan, ne Atgigant Wogamahna, Wabanaki, Uskuida. So again, I wanted to introduce myself in English, as I've acknowledged my ancestral language. It's what you've just heard is the original language of this land. It was the very first language that ever was sounded out. And we are here on our homeland of Miigam'agan, which probably Hawa, the people of First Light, which is our original way of introducing ourselves first and foremost, prior to stepping out of the longhouse. How we would introduce ourselves as a people would be first is your connection. We are a Wabanaki, people of First Light. We are the caretakers of the land, and that we belong to the lobster people of the waters. And I am known here as Miigam'agan, which is we would normally introduce out there as our names, but our names are really describing about what our responsibility is to our sacred mother, to the land that we live on. So language is very important to us. And so the introduction in itself is we would first acknowledge the land, introduce ourselves. When I got that question, it's always very painful. And now I'm remembering the question being asked to my parents, to my grandparents, my great-grandparents, and those are the stories that's been retold so much that they are part of my stories, that I'm deeply connected to that, because I felt I was in the presence of the stories being handed down, and I was part of the stories when they were talking about the time when they could go clam digging down here by the river, or they could go clam digging by the waterfront over by the sandbar, and now that's we're not able to do that, and how the forest was so healthy, and what was happening, and how they lived and brought their camps out here to be, to go out to the hunting grounds or to go to the island and camp there while they fished for mackerel, jigged for mackerel or whatever, and dug for sandbars. And those are stories now that are being told, but the practice isn't there. So historically, she's always changed. Our sacred mother has changed, and her outer world has always shifted, just like the rest of us, from an egg to where we're at now. And so those changes we know are happening. It's how we respond and how we navigate through that. And it's not about trying to control what's changing, but to respond to the change. We know the sea levels are going to rise, and here we're in a very low sea level, the land, and so we have to shift and we have to make those changes. We're responsible, and we have to make that shift to help. It's not just uh, uh, what's happening in a small scale is happening in a bigger scale. So how we respond, our energy, internal world, is going to affect the external world. Um, Majority of the people here are dealing with diabetes, high blood pressure, a lot of uh, diseases that are long term, and it's going to require lifelong medical prescriptions and so on. And so uh, that's the result of not being able to fully maintain our own traditional diets and access to hunting, and we're ocean culture, river culture. So our it takes our indigenous scientists have said that it takes 1,000 years for a human body to adapt to a new diet. So there's going to be a lot of this health uh, situation deterioration that takes form before you adapt to a new diet. And so sugar and flour, that was not our diet. And that we ate a lot of uh, shellfish. And so for myself, we grew up eating a lot of clams that we can access as kids. So, and now we're not able to, so. Well, the language is a key that connects us to that, because everything about our language has a direct connection to our overall well-being with nature. The very fact that when there's sense of belonging, then we're addressing mental health, physical health, emotional health, spiritual health. And so, as a grandmother and a mother, we name our children according to uh, our connection to nature and to land. So my grandson, as an example, is named after the ocean where the sun comes up. And so, and my daughter's name comes from the wind, the breath of our sacred mother. And so when they're small children, this is how important the language is. And this on the side of when we experienced a hurricane in Maine, and my daughter was 9 years old, and she was terrified because the hurricane was coming to where we were at in this little town. And I reminded her, and I said, Jusen, I said, you come from this is your family. you're afraid of. You came from them, and you can communicate to them and send out your feelings, how you're feeling right now to your family, and let them know where you're at. And this is how you're feeling. And so those direct connections and links are so important. And we are very fortunate that we have a language that provides that connection. And our worldview is based on the language, and how in our language we did not have any derogatory words, or words that would devalue life. And so when you have that, that's one of the most important foundations. So when we talk about our connection to nature and our response to climate change, and when you hear terms like Indigenous people have a different relationship with the land, it's because it's the language, it's the gift and our access to that relationship. And so when we're speaking, I would not respond to muskie, birch. It's in response to my kin. So muskie is my kin, and it's not separate. I'm not separate. And there's such a reference to Gaskusi, the cedar. Gaskusi is also, again, we're so intricate. How do you say that?
Interesting. Or connected?
Yes.
Interconnected?
Yes. So much to the land and the plant world, that we're truly one. And that's one of the things what we're talking about is reintroducing our original understanding of the language to our communities. So a term of rematriation is bringing the sacred, feminine sacred back into the language. So it centers us back to our heart and our relationship to the land. And so if you leave a house and no life is in there, the house will die. Much more decay, much more quickly. So, and we could be in the house and not be connected to the house because, but the connection is because it's still alive. When I say Miigam'agan, I recognize that it's part of me, like me. It's an extension, and I'm part of that. So in that way, when we come here and talk about all the life that's here, the names of all the trees, they're our kin, and they're very much alive. And so that connection has been severed. When we're speaking, yes, the language is being spoken in schools, but we have an English definition now to the Miigam'agan language. And so it's very linear. It's not, it's, like young people would say, why should I have to learn the language if I can just instead of saying lentuk, I can say deer? What's the difference? So that's the connection we need to be connecting people. There's a big difference. Because lentuk in our language is, we look to lentuk and we pay attention to what lentuk has to say, because they are Miigam'agan. That's our main. They would be our alpha clan, and what lentuk represents is peace, and so that would be our core foundation of our longhouses, if we maintain and uphold peace, and that we would look to lentuk for that guidance. I know this is something that it might be off key in the discussion, but this is the worldview that is going to be needed to understand the Indigenous knowledge and Indigenous way of being. it's going to require all of us to really connect to the land and to connect to ourselves with the climate change that's coming forth. We need to do that, to ground ourselves, to start replenishing the land. If we were picking and digging for clams, we would be taking the seashells of that and bringing them back to the water. That would bring the calcium, bring all that back. So it's about caring for each other, and how we feel is how the environment we're going to create. If we're not accepting ourselves, and this is our health, this is our connection to those bits and pieces that I shared with you, like my relationship to Musqui, Gaskusi, Guo. That's my grandmother. When I say Guo, I'm responding to her as my grandmother. So it's that kind of an affection and that kind of a relationship. And we are all family, and we have to trust that we all love each other, that they love us, and they're continually teaching us.